Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. And with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Series 8, Episode 7 of Doctor Who, Kill the Moon. And it's definitely an interesting episode, to say the least. I found myself, really, for like the first three quarters of it, just absolutely riveted on the edge of my seat. First feeling that awe and wonder of going out into space, going back to the moon in this case. And, Courtney Wood's being taken off for this ride once again, and absolutely love her character, love the sort of adversarial dynamic she has with Clara, this sort of weird aesthetic going on between her and the Doctor. The Doctor doesn't consider her special, but he's willing to take her on adventures in time and space and to the moon and all this stuff in 2049, the not-too-distant future, where we find that, as soon as the Doctor pulls out his yo-yo, love that reference, too, nodding back to Tom Baker. I think his was one of the first Doctors I remember seeing, pulling out stuff out of his pockets and pulling out a yo-yo, maybe the second Doctor as well. I love that reference, and I love the idea that this is, it's a common thing. It's a toy, and yet the Doctor can get sort of an overarching idea of what's going on with the gravitational pull of the moon being a miss. Something is very wrong because they should be bouncing. There shouldn't be such heavy mass on top of the moon. And I loved that aspect, I got to say, of them traversing the outside of the moon, not sort of confined to corridors and capsules, and actually walking out on the dust on top of the moon, and everything like that. And the heebie-jeebies, from adventure and wonder and awe and majesty to just being completely freaked out by these giant, what are essentially germs or what have you, in the form of these giant alien, like spider-looking things, and the sound effects you hear, and, basically they're killing the two other astronauts that have come to the moon with the woman and everything like that. And at one point, the Doctor skips off, he comes back, they find a crater full of these things, and just hearing that noise and seeing all the, little red lights, I guess, indicating their sensors or their eyes or what have you, throw willies up the back of the spine and everything like that. So the Doctor basically figures out in his time that he, went off on his own, that what is amiss is the moon is not the moon at all, but an egg. It's a giant eggshell containing a life form. And we instantly see Clara and Courtney basically taking the side of, we can't, snuff out this creature without knowing more about it, without knowing what the ramifications will be. We can't, be the only people to decide this. The Doctor won't have any of it. He just kind of up and leaves, and I'm kind of with him on that thinking, because this is something he does all the time. There's a lot of dialogue that's very compelling in this episode, to the effect, kind of harkening back once again to Tom Baker's era, the Pyramids of Mars episode, where, there's a point sort of at the beginning of that story where the Doctor's talking very gallantly and full of himself in a sense, in a distancing, sort of sense to Sarah Jane. I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity and all this stuff. She kind of calls him on it and is like, well, what the hell does that mean? But that's kind of what the Doctor's doing. In essence, in this episode, he's trying to distance himself from making such a decision that will equate, ramifications for the future of Earth and mankind and all this stuff, leaving the human element to decide. And Clara ends up really resenting it, and that's kind of where the episode takes a turn. Once he comes back and they have decided to not kill this being, he brings them back to Earth. They see in the sky above this thing has hatched. It leaves another moon, air quotes, egg behind and all this stuff. Everything is fine. He goes to bring him home, and this is where Clara just has had an absolute enough. And at first I couldn't really relate to why she had suddenly blown up at him. But you have to realize, the conflict between these two, the Doctor previous to this was somebody who would, go to the nth degree to make the right decisions and jump in and fix things and all that kind of stuff. And now we have a Doctor who's very much like, you go do it. Lovely little human beings, this is your fight, this is your decision, I'm not going to be any part of it and all this kind of stuff. And you kind of feel for him, because in a sense, this is something he's got to deal with and do all the time. This is what he's been doing since he first left Gallifrey. On the other hand, you got Clara, who is a vulnerable human being, who can't deal with making such a humongous decision like this, and it nearly brings her to her knees, to the point where she's willing to call off being with the Doctor on any further adventures and all that kind of stuff. Danny Pink, of course, believes that's not quite the case as yet, but this could be sort of a forerunner of, if Clara decides to part ways with the Doctor at some point in the near future, Well, now we kind of know, or we might have hints as to why that would be, and it's just really uber compelling, and it was kind of a shock seeing that bomb drop to buy Clara onto the Doctor, but, we're basically seeing two characters who have come into their own, and it's not so much playfully playing off each other anymore. It's now, the Doctor is distancing. He is less sort of human. He is less sympathetic in the way that the previous Doctor has been and other incarnations have been. And maybe he didn't make the right decision. I can't really say as a fan I kind of agreed with him to a degree, but I can also see Claire's side, so it's definitely one for the ages. And so yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the episode. Once again, I want to shout out to Howard. Thanks for making it possible for me to check this episode out. And otherwise, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of it, if you've seen it, and I hope this video finds you well. And I'll catch you all later. Peace.